Well, here we are continuing in the Psalms, and just want to thank you for being with me in this. Over the years, the viewership has grown slowly but steadily, and I do appreciate that. When you like a video or make a comment, it makes it visible to more and more people across YouTube. And you can also tell your friends, invite your family and friends, maybe people in your church to be watching. I'd love to expand the footprint as the Lord uses this more and more and expands the reach of the ministry. Also, if you are in the Fort Collins area, Fort Collins, Colorado, a pastor, co-pastor of a church there called Solid Bread Community. Invite you to join us some Sunday, and if you happen to drop in or here on vacation or just passing through, introduce yourself. Love to meet you. Love to find out where you're from and how the Lord is using at work in your life, and perhaps using Theo Faith to help you as well. So we're in Psalm 114 today, and we are looking at the whole series of Psalms that really combined together. They are associated thematically, topically. What we see here, I think, is in Psalm 113, we were reminded that God is not only a sovereign, holy God over the whole universe, but one who is near us, who is with us, who is observing. He's there for us. He helps us. He intervenes for us. Question is, in this psalm, he sees you. Do you see him? That seems to be the theme here, and this is the title I've given this psalm. Really celebrates, it's a celebration of God's power demonstrated to Israel in two ways. First, at the Exodus, when he brought them out of Egypt, and then when he brought them into the promised land. The psalm uses really vivid imagery, I think, to depict the response to God, even nature, and how nature responds to him. And what we see here as you go through it today, it's a short psalm. I'm not going to give you an outline for such a short psalm. I'll challenge you to go do it. But two things to take note of here is the Red Sea. He's talked about the sea looked and fled. He's using very poetic language here. He's talking about the Red Sea fled at the Exodus. And then the next line in that, the next cola in that verse, the Jordan turned back. He's talking about the Jordan River turned back and opened the crossing into the promised land. So the psalmist is reminding Israel of not only how God delivered them in the Exodus, but welcomed them into the promised land by holding back the Jordan River. And you'll see that. So this is really a reminder to God's people of God's power exercised in their behalf. So let's take a look at this psalm. Got you looking at my face. Sometimes I forget to change the view. Didn't this time. Let's take a look at our here verse today. Tremble, O earth, before the Lord, before the God of Jacob. So again, this is a reminder, and a powerful reminder, I think, of the authority of God over the world. We saw that in the last psalm, but also the presence of his people. So you see how those two topics from the previous psalm kind of roll into this one in a different way. A reminder to Israel that the whole earth trembles, and maybe they should too, right? This is a reflection of nature's reaction. It says the mountains trembled, the sea parted, earth quaked in awe of God. We were talking about fear and how we should fear him. And if this is the response of nature, what should be our response? Shouldn't we be paying attention to him? Do we see him? I think this verse particularly sums up really the central theme. He's sovereign. He's present with us. He's at work in our behalf as he was in Israel. His presence demands reverence and fear from us, but even nature itself is personified here as having enough wisdom to fear God, to shake, to tremble. The physical creation recognizes his majesty. I like in verse 7 here how he refers to him before the God of Jacob. So this ties God's exercise of power to his faithfulness to Jacob, his faithfulness to Israel, reminding his readers that the same God who brought them out of Egypt, the same God who brought them into the promised land, is that very God who protects and provides for them. So, and an explanation to us as well, not just for them, but for us. So as we look at this, then we move from our explanation to how do we apply this? And let me suggest that this should be another way, another opportunity for us to grow in awe and reverence of God as we see other attributes about him. I'll talk to that in a minute here. But this reveals some new things to us about God. And, we may not and have not witnessed the parting of the Red Sea. We haven't seen God's power stop up the Jordan River. But nevertheless, God is not only at work in history all around us, but at work in our lives. As I challenged you yesterday to take time to recognize his hand working in your life during the day. So this verse challenges us not to recognize, but to respond to God's presence. Are we taking his holiness? Are we taking his power? Are we taking his presence with us for granted? Or are we cultivating a sense of fear, awe, reverence, respect? In our daily life, do we think of God in a way that causes us to tremble out of deep respect and obedience to him? Or do we just go on as if nothing's changed? So I challenge you to take some time to meditate really on God's greatness and reflect on how you respond to his work in your life, the way he has perhaps liberated you from sin just as he's liberated Israel from Egypt, how he has welcomed you not into the promised land. We're part of the church. We don't have a land, but we do have the church and his heavenly people and his local congregation, how he has welcomed you in and given you a place. My wife and I often reflect on how God has really shepherded us in a very literal way, giving us, directing us before we even knew what a Bible teaching church was. Neither of us grew up in a Christian home, always directing us to Bible teaching churches, always directing us to churches where pastors took their pulpit responsibility seriously. And that's a reason I give thanks to God and see his power at work in my life. So perhaps something like that for you as well. Let me just go on here for just a minute. I'm checking the time. I've got just 8 minutes, so I don't want to go too long. But I've told you before about suggesting that perhaps you get a notebook and just ask yourself, what does this teach me about God? Let me give you some guidance here for this psalm if you want to do that. When you step back and look at the psalm and ask yourself, what does this teach me about God? One of the things you want to look at is God's sovereignty, that God is sovereign. The whole earth, all creation trembles. He controls all of creation, the parting of the Red Sea, making the Jordan turn back, the mountains trembling. This is all God at work here. And verse 7, it's calling on the earth to tremble before the Lord. So one of the things you learn about God is his really absolute, powerful sovereignty. Another thing you can learn about God is his immanence and his transcendence. Big words there. Let me explain that a little bit. God's immanence is a word, IMMANENCE. Immanence is his nearness to his people. This is the God being near, being involved, being awake and alive in his people's life. And at the same time, he is transcendent. His power, his greatness extend far beyond the created world, far beyond you and I, into the universe, into the heavens as well, even into hell, he is present. And God's holiness is, his immanence and his transcendence are highlighted in this psalm. We also see his holiness. I think the responsive nature, the trembling and shaking indicates that they are in the presence of holiness. Holiness is God's absolute separation, his otherness, his separation from what's common that just demands reverence. He is so different from the rest of us. So there's several things: his sovereignty, his eminence, his transcendence, and his holiness, I think, are reflected in this verse or in this psalm in various ways. And if you are keeping that notebook that I suggested of perhaps a notebook on the Psalms, what you're learning and what you're learning about God, this would be a great place to four great attributes to take note of. So God bless you. I thank you for being here again. Thank you for being part of this, and encourage you to like the video, comment on it, tell your friends, and let's see what God will do with what we're doing. God bless you.